usually a person with a long, full life contributing to our town and community. But today I'd like to start with a moment of silence for Vincent Gagliardi, Somerville High School senior resident of Branchburg, who left us much too soon. I, like most of you, have kids and grandkids, and the thought of a life unfulfilled is, to me, is the hardest thing that a family, a parent, and a community can bear. So just I'd like to start with a few moments of silence for Vincent Gagliardi, student, athlete, leaving us much too soon. Now on to a more traditional moment of silence. We lost this morning a statesman, a hero, Colin Powell. Tremendous resume, but a person is more than a resume. A person is, I think, measured by the lives they touch and the people that they surround themselves with and the impact they've had on not only individuals but society as a whole. And I think we'd all be hard-pressed to find a better contributor to the American way of life than General and Secretary of State Colin Powell. Thank you. Kevin, did we get a directive on the tags that have staff?
I'm not sure. I did ask Simon Henley.
All right, let's do that pro bono. And I think it's important. Thank you. All right, we have two sets of minutes to approve on September 20 and October 4. So moved. Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes. All right, we have departmental reports and notices, the most important of which is the election day, traditional election day on November 2nd. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Kevin, no changes in the traditional 9 polling places in Somerville, correct?
Somerville is the same, yes. And they also, obviously, we have early voting this year, which is the first time we have that. That's being offered at different locations in other municipalities, but here in the county.
I believe all that information is on the sample ballot.
That's correct.
All right, so if you did not get your sample ballot on Saturday, you should get it today or within the next week or so. I'm actually going to have a public service program tomorrow with Steve Peter, our county clerk, to go over that. So you can vote in person on election day, as you normally do. You can request this year a mail-in ballot. If they're not automatic, you have to request them. And then the third option is to go to the nearest one from Somerville is the Bridgewater Municipal Complex on Commons Way in Garrettson Road, and that's going to be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. starting on the 23rd of October for 10 days. So there's plenty of options, plenty of opportunity to vote, and we just encourage everybody to exercise that most important right. All right, we have the St. Hubert's report and the Somerville Health Department report again as listed, and they're available in the clerk's office if you need them. We have our traditional bi-weekly committee reports, and I'll start with Councilman Pitts to my far left.
Thank you, Your Honor. Recreation announcements, pre-season wrestling clinic, grades kindergarten to 8th, free for all Somerville residents. It will be held at the Rhino Wrestling Club in Hillsborough from October 16th to November 13th. Spookyville 2021 Spooky House Decorating Contest will be judged on October 27th and winners announced on Halloween. All entries must be registered on Community Pass by October 22nd. Somerville Turkey Trot will be held this year as scheduled on Thanksgiving, starting at 9 a.m. And don't forget all basketball and wrestling registrations are due by November 5th. DSA news, we have a lot of great things going on through the Downtown Somerville Alliance. The DSA raised more than $7,000 in Hurricane Ida donations. Approximately $5,000 of those dollars were collected to benefit businesses in the district that sustained significant damage due to the storm. The DSA board voted to match these funds to create a small grant program to benefit those businesses in our city. The remaining 2,000 plus of the donation and gift cards will be distributed through the Civic League for residents in need of direct relief. The DSA is near completing their rebranding. Look for the new look throughout the downtown early next year. The DSA and the Recreation Department are working together on Halloween Spectacular taking place Friday, October 29th, starting at 3 p.m. Also, make sure to get your tickets for downtown Somerville's first haunted walking tour, happening this Saturday, October 23rd. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman Burrow.
I have nothing to see here.
Councilman Mitchell.
Okay. The weekend journey through the past was very successful. I had about 30 visitors to Borough Hall and over 130 at the Fire Museum. I want to thank all the volunteers who gave up their weekend to run the tours. The Historic Advisory Committee wants to reserve the council chamber for its meetings at 7 p.m. on the third Thursday of every month. So they will be meeting here in this room, starting this coming Thursday, I believe it's the third Thursday of each month. The Environmental Commission has requested a tour of the SRVSA's South Side sewage plant once the construction is complete. It's expected to be done next month. The Environmental Commission expressed disappointment that the stormwater ordinance did not include the Sustainable Jersey enhancement, and they are requesting to be added back in by amendment. And finally, the Environmental Commission plans to clean up Tree Arbor on the weekend of November the 13th. On High Street, just east of the Brook. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Brady.
Yes, sir. Last week, the redevelopment committee met to discuss rezoning the garden department in an effort to mitigate flooding in certain areas. The committee recommended that a new ordinance could be drafted whereby there would be various garden department designations that would allow rebuilding in flood-prone areas. Not all garden department areas in town would be treated the same, since the location of a brook in certain areas is not going to be a factor in other areas of the borough. The recommendation will be made in the form of an ordinance to council that we hope will be brought to the table at our November meeting. And this is the first step in trying to mitigate damage we saw during Hurricane Ida. And it really offers us an opportunity to act proactively rather than reactively when Mother Nature decides to visit us with more of these storms. That's how I wanted to.
I look forward to seeing that, because it makes no sense to rebuild at the same elevation and cross our fingers that it's not going to happen again. So I'm looking for, as we look forward, we want, we want people to be safe. So hopefully this will address some of that. Mr. President.
Yes, a few quick DPW notes. There are several streets with work being done this week, including Ivanhoe, West Spring Street, and East High Street. There are many more streets that will be either pipe work, being milled and paved, some curbing. All of those updates will be provided on the Borough's social media platform. The vehicles at DPW have been through appraisals, and they are now going through the rest of the insurance process to determine which ones are suitable to be kept. An office trailer is over at DPW, so DPW can continue to serve the needs of the borough. We are currently awaiting snow bids for snow removal. When that comes, it's early, but we got to be on top of that. And finally, at the public library, the county library system, which Somerville is a part of, announced just today that as of January 1st, 2022, they are eliminating all late fines for books, DVDs, and whatever needs to be rented. This is an important step forward, because this, a lot of the times, has people scared, and they don't want to rent for fear of having to pay late fines. Now, with that gone, we will be able to have more people, more demographics rent from our library. That is all I have.
I can relate to your last comment, Mr. President. When I was growing up, just to give you a time capsule, the book fine was a penny a day after, I think, 10 days. And time goes fast. So I would read those books quickly and try and get it back the next day. The research shows that fine-free libraries increase circulation. So if we can get books and other printed materials and other media out into the public's hands, I think it's a good program, and I'm pretty confident that it will be successful. And, you know, the numbers will show. All right, I only have one comment which I'll reserve for during our resolution aspect of the meeting, because I want to comment on one resolution that I'm asking council to adopt tonight. So at that point, we will have one discussion item, Kevin, on the Holiday Lights Parade scheduled for December 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And I don't know if you yourself or Councilman Brew want to lead the discussion.
Well, Mr. Bowden actually was attending, and he must have got caught up on something else. But he was going to speak to it. But basically, it's the same, you know, it's the same format.
Same route as last year?
Yeah, same route as last year. They'll work through some of the logistics as they define everything. But it's scheduled for December 4th. It's been, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. So every year it gets a little better, a little bigger, a little more exciting. People are getting a little more, you know, make a little more of an event out of it. And if the weather cooperates, it'll be a fantastic
And
evening.
it draws departments from a wide area as well. It's not just our local thing. It's the men and women from various departments, and they're equally proud of what they do. And it's a nice event. Let's just make sure that the route is published so that people on the route know that there's going to be some impact, and people that don't live on that route know where to go to get a good view.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have several ordinances for introduction only tonight. First one is 2648, 211018, authorizing and encouraging electric vehicle supply service equipment and make-ready parking spaces. Can I have a motion for introduction?
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes,
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
All right, our next ordinance.
The next one, Mayor, I need to change the title on that, because we did make an amendment, and there's other changes in there.
You
So
want
the proper title on there should be establishing salary range of employee titles to be paid to certain officers and employees of the Borough of Somerville. So you would be eliminating the Director of Communications. While that title is also included in there, so is other titles. So it should
it's
just,
more encompassing. Okay.
that's correct, yeah.
All right, so ordinance 2649, 211018 is establishing a salary range for a specified borough.
So moved. Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
yes,
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
All right, and the third ordinance for introduction only is 2650-21-1018, bond ordinance providing an appropriation of $800,000 for acquisition of a fire truck formed by the Borough of Somerville in the County of Somerset, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $760,000 bonds or notes of the borough for financing part of the appropriation.
So moved.
Second.
second.
Council members.
Can I?
I prefer to wait until the hearing.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
Kevin, those three ordinances will be up for hearing and adoption on November 1st or the 15th.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think Jeremy, the first one, does that have to go to planning board?
Yes.
Yeah, so the next one may not be.
All right,
Does
that
that go to
first
the
one,
planning
first one
board?
goes to
Yeah.
Yeah, we're meeting next week, so there may be time to get it back. Well, we'll see. All right.
Yeah.
All right, but the other two
The other two
will
should be on
probably be
next
on
meeting.
for November 1. All right, so we'll have our public hearing prior to council deliberating and voting on those ordinances on November 1. All right. We're at the open public meeting section. All public comments should be addressed to myself. Public comments can be of any matter or concern. We ask you to respect the 5-minute time limit per speaker, and speakers may speak only once, unused time cannot be yielded, I will take a motion to open public.
So moved.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady.
Yes.
Tom Mitchell. Randy Pitts.
Yeah.
Roger Vroom.
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
Public session is open right now. I will allow our youngest attendee to come up first because we don't know how long she's going to stay quiet. Please come up, and you can sit, name and address for the public.
No, this is not the wrong one. As you guys know me, I am Julie Montanari, former resident at 76 East Cliff Street, Apartment 1, currently displaced at 140 Hughes Lane in Watchung, New Jersey. And I'm really disappointed to be in front of you guys again. But I won't do the speaking right away. I'll have my colleague and associate start next time before I continue because we will bounce off each other. But what needs to be said is a little more important before you guys hear me again. So.
Thank you.
Nika Dyke, Nikadeichtch. I live at 70 Brookside Avenue. I'm a resident of Brookside Gardens on Brookside Avenue. I was lucky enough to not be displaced during the flooding, but the lack of accurate information coming from Edgewood properties has been quite concerning. I didn't notice that Brookside Gardens was starting to flood on September 1st until around 11 p.m. when I went to walk my dog and saw the parking lot underwater. I, along with many other tenants, were never made aware at any time that there was an evacuation underway for the entire apartment complex. I was also not made aware that there were concerns about multiple natural gas leaks until I saw the wonderful mayor at our apartment place a few days later with the firemen. One of my neighbors was told to evacuate only after calling the maintenance phone line about an electrical issue, and my neighbor was told by her handling maintenance calls that, quote, "It's every man for themselves, get out if you can, the dumpsters are floating." For over a week after the storm, we had no gas or hot water. Some of our neighbors also had no electricity. We were not given an estimate on when those services would return. In fact, my partner and I were only alerted to our gas being turned back on by being woken up by our dog freaking out about a man in our apartment. At 9 a.m. on Sunday the 12th, an employee of Brookside Gardens entered our apartment without announcing themselves to turn our gas back on. They claimed that they knocked on our door but heard no response and proceeded to enter. We were understandably quite alarmed to see a random employee descending into our apartment, but this is sadly an ongoing issue with many of the residents also having reported finding an unannounced employee in their apartments. Some of my neighbors also noted that some of their personal items went missing after these visits. Recently, we held a community meeting to discuss our concerns and recovery from the flooding. Many residents and community members came and we had a great turnout, but no one from Edgewood Properties, the owners, came to the meeting to clear any confusion. We also learned that a huge amount of this information was being spread by Edgewood Properties, including that they were claiming they never had an evacuation plan in place for residents. We learned that this was false when an ex-fireman informed us that while he was still a member of the fire service, Brookside Gardens absolutely had an evacuation plan in place. We also learned at the meeting that the intermittent alarm going off the night of the storm was in fact an evacuation alarm, which very few residents were aware of. That same alarm went off again this month, October, on the 12th at 8 a.m., the 13th at 8 a.m. and 10:30 p.m., and the 4th at 10:30 p.m. Each time for about 10 minutes for no discernible reason. There has been no communication on this matter, and one morning it even seemed to require emergency personnel to respond to the alarm. These alarms have been disruptive and disquieting as many residents are still traumatized by the flood as the alarm sounded earlier. But the biggest problem at the moment is that Edgewood Properties is now requiring non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, in order for displaced residents to either break their lease, get refunded security deposits, or even just get a rent payment refund for the time they were displaced. Residents are now being told they must sign an NDA, which requires signers to not disclose the amount of money they are returning to the residents, which can vary be found from $100 to up to a couple of thousand. The NDA they are making people sign also requires signers to not speak disparagingly or publish negative comments about Edgewood Properties, and if an NDA signer does speak out, Edgewood Properties is allowed to issue a $5,000 fine for each occurrence. The NDA also states that the signer will release Edgewood Properties from any responsibilities. That also includes any type of injury claim, including illness from mold and water quality. which is especially concerning since many residents have been complaining about mold damage in their apartments for years prior to the flood. One of my neighbors was even told by Edgewood Properties to just shower less frequently in response to a mold problem in their bathroom that Edgewood Properties was unwilling to remedy. In regards to water quality, the unevacuated residents were reporting for up to a week after the flood that the water coming out of the taps was brown. Neither Edgewood Properties nor New Jersey American Water informed the remaining residents as to ongoing issues in water quality. I am sure it is also concerning to you, Somerville Borough Council, that displaced and vulnerable residents are our community are being forced to be silent from voicing their concerns that affect both Brookside Gardens and Somerville as a whole. Somerville residents pay various taxes towards affordable housing in our township. Brookside Gardens is a major receiver of these funds. If tax money is going to go to subpar, if not dangerous accommodations, then it is in Somerville's best interest to be aware of those issues, as with properties requiring NDA makes it impossible for these issues to be brought to light, especially since many of the residents are unaware that they do not need to legally sign these papers to get their money back, especially since many of the residents are either not native English speakers, are over the age of 55, or otherwise vulnerable to this form of monetary coercion. We are asking you, the Somerville Borough Council, to step in and help us resolve these issues. How can we even attempt to recover from the devastating effects of Hurricane Ida if Edgewood Properties actively refuses to speak with us and continue to avoid all attempts at communication? Thank you for your time.
Kevin, are we aware of this non-disclosure?
I've heard of it. I personally have not seen it. Nor
So,
have
no, we were made
I
aware-
received a copy of it.
We were made aware of a lease, of a new lease agreement that people were going to be signing.
I have not.
We haven't seen that
I don't have
either.
any documents from Edgewood other than.
All right. I'll get back to you. Jeremy, in terms of landlord tenant, I mean, I rely on your expertise. Where is our role in this event?
It's pretty limited. I'm unaware of any state law that mandates one way or the other on an NDA and on a private contract like a lease. They definitely have a legal problem, and you should definitely seek legal counsel. You want to talk to an attorney about that. I'm not sure. I think the power of the council to address this problem is pretty limited.
Because I know that state law requires the return of the security deposit and the rent.
Under a lot of circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms
But
of,
to
in terms
address
of the
that, even to
concerns.
address that problem,
No.
is not something the mayor or the council can get involved in. You just don't have the power to do that.
Let's let the residents go now. Again, sure,
No. You guys should know me by now. I'm a woman on a mission, and this is nothing. So, as you heard, this is one of the many issues of residents who are still at East Cliff Street or located at Mercer and the other Brookside residents. And like I said earlier before I let her speak, I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to have this conversation. You guys did offer George, Burke, Ashley herself, and some other people from Brookside the idea of a town council meeting, or if you want to say, a little community hall discussion. As you heard, I, myself, and a few other residents got together. We talked, we had multiple community meetings. Mr. Weed, we appreciate you showing up to the last one and listening to the cause and concern. But the biggest issue is the bottom. I took Mr. Burke's peace offering. I called him personally to find out information. I have a copy of the NDA. More than willing to share it with you. But the issue is as follows. People do not know about the NDA. As you heard, we have non-English speakers. We have residents over 65. We have young residents who are just new to this whole thing of what is an NDA. Now, the other major issue, and I know you, Somerville, will not appreciate this, because this is not an image we want for this community or this town, is that we have racial discrimination happening at East Cliff Street of who can stay, who can leave, who's getting money back, who isn't. And honest to God, I am appalled. I am appalled as a woman of color, as a mother, as a townswoman of Somerville, that this is being allowed, that nothing has been done. I mean, I have neighbors still reaching out to me. It's been what, a month? I'm still getting phone calls. I'm still waiting for George Burke to give me a call back to get information. I've asked what is required of the NDA, what's given back, and the following information I received is once you sign the NDA, it could take up to 30 days. Unfortunately, they cannot help us because it's considered an act of God, but that's the most they can do. I've had residents who signed the NDA 2 days after the flooding, there's still no money. I've had residents who have signed it, got $100, Brookside went back, found a bad review, and is going after them. But my biggest concern, which puts all this aside, is when I walk back to my apartment, the negligence of a master key left. Right next door, doors open. I have neighbors telling me that there's been theft of their property due to Brookside. Items being thrown out. When Brookside reassured us of East Cliff Street that we'd be able to go back, gather whatever was left of our water-filled lives, and not worried about it being thrown away. And I know many of you have seen the pile of trash that is left, that is molding, that is festering, that is now a health hazard that can go back into our ecosystem because the brook's not that far. But pure negligence is still going on. There are no answers. They can come in and sit like they did that night and look like sugar cookies and act like everything is okay. But it is far from the truth. And we are here to bring to light that they should no longer be allowed to do this. And we know you guys cannot do much. We do understand. But you are our voice currently. Because, as I said before, I've been the voice is now being ignored. So we're asking you to somehow, some way be the bigger voice, because this should never be allowed. And that is something that can take away people's lives. I've had families go back in. Stuff has been thrown in a dumpster. For example, we called, my husband and I, and they said that if we called and we told them we will go in and we will clean our items, they wouldn't throw it out. I went back a couple days later. The one thing I wanted to save, my daughter's crib, gone, without any notice. And then they had the audacity, when we tried to call, not just to find out information about why our stuff was thrown out, but many others, to tell us, well, because you spoke to George Burke himself, you have no communication with us. And then not even 2 days later, we're getting harassing phone calls. When are you returning your keys? When are you doing this? And our same response, until we hear from George Burke, we will hold on to our keys. We are officially the last residents to have keys there that were told we had to move and break lease. And to top that off, if you look under the affordable housing, you go to the website yourself, you go under Branchburg, you see 171 Mercer, anything related to Mercer Street, you see Brookside Gardens itself saying move in, available November 1st. What does that mean for us who were displaced? What about us? I even have neighbors who have gone to hand in the keys, let go of their lease, and have watched the leasing office sign new leases for new people coming in, forgetting us. You have to not allow this anymore. Whether you can do anything about Jack Morris or Brookside, that's fine. But don't allow this to happen to any more of your community. We are just as important as regular taxpayers who have houses, the businesses. We matter too. We're most of your diversity in this town. Help us. Somehow, I don't care. Even if it's not me and my daughter. And I will make this announcement. I've been nominated to run for write-in for council because I am this outside voice that we do not hear in this town. And I am grateful and very proud to be that voice. But I am asking you to show your town and your community you are hearing and you are listening to us. Even if it is us of diversity, us renters, us lower class, or whatever Brookside would like to put us as. Help. Be our ears, be our voices. Your town is asking for you to step out. Whether it's with me, what happened to DPW vehicles, anything, listen to us. We're now begging. Families like mine are begging. They cannot still be here. Most are still in hotels, don't have vehicles. Still haven't received money from FEMA, Red Cross, Brookside, nothing. So please, because I really do not want to be up here again discussing Brookside. When my life, her life, my memories washed away in that flood, I want to wash my hands of Brookside. But obviously, it's me who has to get things done. So thank you for hearing me once again. And obviously, you won't be hearing any less than you'll be hearing from me more.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. In terms of legal representation, which it sounds like there's a need, would a group be able to go to legal aid as a group, or would they individually have to make an application?
So we have talked
Hold on a
about,
second. That's what they're for.
That's what they're-
Absolutely, they have, it sounds like they have a legitimate legal grievance against their landlord.
Kevin, do you have information, contact for legal aid that you can provide to them? I mean, it sounds like, you know, and again, government is limited in what it can do in the private sector. Some of the concerns you raised are new to me, and I don't like what I'm hearing, if indeed that is the way you're being treated. And so I appreciate you enlightening us, because we wouldn't know otherwise. And Kevin, you can provide that. I wish I had known we would have had people from Brookside back here again, but if they're not being responsive, there's no guarantee they would have shown anyway. But they have a responsibility to hear your concerns, because they're the ones that are able to act upon them. Jeremy, other than legal aid, any?
I was going to say that most leases provide for the losing side to pay the winning side legal fees. So I'm sure there were plenty of private attorneys who would be reaching the matter as well. They're not limited to just legal aid. There are plenty of attorneys who would take the case on a
Because
contingency basis.
it's cost plus damages and fees.
Plenty of lawyers around.
so
It's one thing New Jersey has a lot of.
yes, but if you don't mind stepping back up.
Very quickly.
Yes, we have discussed that. We all have discussed a possible class action suit. But the way Brookside is silencing most of us is by the NDAs. So I will personally email you fellow council members, a copy. But the issue is now people are afraid because I haven't received
Well,
money.
I have to tell you, that has nothing to do with the mayor and council. They're not in a position to give you
No.
advice about an NDA.
We know.
It
We're
sounds
just
like
letting you
pretty
know.
much already have it figured out.
We do. We just want you to know because here you are getting the wool pulled over your eyes.
If you send it to the administrator, he'll file it in case the need arises at some later
It's good to
date.
see at least.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. Again, we just wanted to know you guys were being scammed, because that's exactly what's happening, not just to you, but to your town, to your taxpayers, to everybody else.
all right, thank you. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Mr. Mack?
Frank McAlevey, 129 Bartine Street, Borough. Just got a couple of questions and comments. In reference to the salary range for borough employees, how is it determined? That's a question, comment, and
Yeah, we
you might
have-
not be able to answer it now.
We have an existing salary guide, which is a range. It's not a specific salary. It creates a range for a position, from entry level to a senior person. And Kevin, in a nutshell,
There's only two items on that entire ordinance that's being changed. One is for the Director of Communications, which is a new position. And we added the emergency management coordinator, anticipating that there might be a need for that salary as well on a part-time basis.
That does not answer my question. How is the range for all of them?
But you mean for all positions, not just the ones in this.
Yeah.
So let me answer that question for you. So the range is historical, so it's pretty much adjusted on a cost of living arrangement. Now, keep in mind, the range is the range. The governing body can change that as it feels fit. Obviously, the salary is determined within that range. In most of those cases, the ranges are established while we're going through collective bargaining agreement, negotiations, things like that. But, you know, they're created, you know, and they're adjusted pretty much annually.
But on what basis? On the basis of Somerville? Or do we compare to Raritan and Bridgewater?
No, they're not, the ranges aren't compared to any other municipality that I'm aware of. They're basically historical ranges that have existed within the borough that are just adjusted annually.
Is that acceptable? I don't know.
Are you asking me that question?
Well, I'm supposed to address the mayor, but he'll defer to you probably.
well, we rely on our professional staff to give us the market conditions as to what a given salary range would be, because we want to attract good candidates. So we, you know, I'm sure Kevin doesn't just create numbers. He's in constant communication with his peers in other towns. We go to, you know, training seminars, the League of Municipalities. So a range is established for what what given rate a job is worth within, I would say, the central New Jersey area.
Yeah, and it is a range, so keep in mind, it's so that when we advertise for a particular position, and we'll, you know, especially the new ones, we look at what people are getting paid in those roles. The older ones are generally established by union contracts that have been in place for 50 years. I don't know how long they've been, but basically they're just adjusted annually.
One question I have, over the past several years, we seem to have had a lot of resignations. Do we know why? Do we conduct exit interviews? Or is there a reason for all these people leaving to go to other places?
Well,
Exit interviews are part of a policy manual, and they're always done, you know. I'm not familiar with an enormous amount of people leaving. I think we're probably very similar. We unfortunately, the way the public sector works is, you know, most of the people that we fill here, we take from other municipalities if it's a job that requires experience. The same thing with us is, you know, we do offer a lot of education, a lot of training tools for our employees, and opportunities present themselves, and they want to better themselves and their families. So they, in most of those cases, that's when they take another position.
Does the borough have a table of organization?
Sure.
A wire diagram? It says who reports to whom?
Yeah.
Okay. Would it be
Kevin-
possible to
Kevin
pick
has
that up
that.
maybe sometime at your convenience?
Sure.
I'm actually doing a second grade program at Vanderveer on that very topic next month. So I'm actually going to ask Kevin for that chart as well, and then, you know, customize it to the 7-year-old audience. But no, we do have it by department, and then also for the whole, you know, for the whole borough.
Last question. How long does it take an employee to reach the top of the level of the salary range?
It's hard to give one answer because each contract, each union is in a different, you know, negotiated settlement, and we have several non-union employees whose salary are determined, you know, without a salary guide.
And where that employee started in the range.
Right. So for instance, a new person in the Dpw might come here, let's just use a number, $40,000. If they get a 2% increase over 10 years, they're now at $50,000. The range that we establish might be lower and higher so that there's room to grow within. But the rate at which they increase is subject to negotiations. Usually the contracts are all multi-year, so you know at the beginning of the contract what your salary will be for the next 3 or 4 years. And then if someone stays around, you know, long enough, if the salary range is increased 2 or 3% a year, they'll never reach the maximum. I don't think we've ever had anybody, I think we've had to increase the salary range because someone exceeded it.
Well, I mean,
We revisit it every few years.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, with the exception to a few employees, they're all in a CBA, they're all in collective bargaining agreement. So I mean, that kind of dictates where they are. When that CBA's, when the collective bargaining agreement is negotiated, that kind of, you know, puts them at a certain salary level. There are times that you know, I'm not familiar with a particular one where they exceeded the salary range, but if they did, the governing body would just have to change their ordinance to reflect that.
Yeah, I get concerned. I look at the salaries that some people are making according to the range, and I say, how do these people do it? Some of them can't afford to live in Somerville, and, you know, we're a big multi-million-dollar corporation, and perhaps at some point in time, we should really be sitting down and saying, what are these people actually worth? If they're not worth anything, then fire them. But if they've been here a number of years and they've been doing their job right, hey, let's pat them on the back and say, hey, we appreciate your good work, continue to march. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Any more public comment or question?
Hi, I'm Macy, 192 Grove Street, and it is the corner of Grove and Spring. We have had multiple accidents happening since I moved in 14 and a half years ago, the day we closed on our house, we were moving boxes into the attic and we heard crash. And that was the day we moved in, and it really hasn't let up since. So I would like to propose replacing the stop signs, which are actually very faded as well, with the flashing, the same kind of setup over on Cliff Street. The flashing stop signs and the rumble strips. 2 days in a row last week, Tuesday morning, there was a van carrying senior citizens that just blew through, I watched it happen, blew through the stop sign, slammed into another woman's car on her driver's side. Didn't even make an attempt to stop. I just feel like if those rumble strips were there, maybe it would have made him more aware. He must not have paid attention, and maybe he would have been more aware with the rumble strips and flashing signs. The very next day, another car blew the stop sign, and it was like a near, like inches away from slamming into their car, so.
After our conversation the other day,
Yeah.
I asked the chief to run a report. I'll share it with you, Randy, tomorrow. There have been 5 accidents there over about a 2-year period.
Yeah, and they
So-
wind up on our lawns as well, and so many kids, dog walkers, I mean, there's so much foot traffic in that area, especially mornings, kids walking to from all of the schools, the high school, the middle school, as well as Vanderveer, so.
I think we've had pretty good feedback on our treatment on Borough and Cliff.
Yeah, that's
So-
what I was wondering, if
Randy,
they
I'll send you the
noticed,
list.
if there's
We'll talk
been.
with DPW and police. You're right there too. You live down the road.
We're neighbors.
Yep.
And when the accidents happened last week, I reported it to some members of council and Kevin, and we do have a plan in place.
All right, well, I thank you for that, because I don't like my kids to even be out in my front yard, it's like such a scary corner.
No, we're gonna take care of it.
Awesome, thank
Just on the
you.
rumble strips, and the councilman did call me, is the timetable to put that down actually has exceeded because of the weather.
Sure.
So we have a contract that will be done in the spring, so there's so much
Well,
outside.
it's perfect, because they're paving that right now, actually today, they've been paving that corner, so. I'm-
Until that happens, the council members are gonna lay there and have okay?
You'll see me laying out there tomorrow morning.
We are,
Yeah.
we are sensitive to pedestrian safety. And
Yeah,
like I said, we reacted to the,
yeah.
corner just down the street from you, and there's no reason why we can't take that.
And I also wanted to say, Wade came and put up the new pedestrian crossing sign, got knocked down, and then I mentioned to him another one had been hit down months ago, and he was there within 2 hours with another sign, so I was very impressed. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hearing no further comment, I'll take a motion to close.
So move.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell, Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
Public session is closed. We're going to go on to our set resolutions. I have 2 that I'd like to pull, 294 and 298. Council, any further? All right, I'll read these off. 290, cancellation of a borough tax sale for 60 Hamilton Street. 291, approving trunk or treat to use angled parking spaces in front of the courthouse on October 29th from 3 till 7. 292 is approving a title of Director of Communications. 293, authorizing the Borough Administrator to execute an agreement modification for Safe Routes to School grant on Veterans Memorial Drive East. 295, accepting a transfer of New Jersey Fireman's application for Octavio Angelosi. 296, amending resolution approving qualified private developments entitled to reimbursement for solid waste collection. 297, awarding a contract to Sturty Coney USA Hopping Services under Sourcewell pricing for mobile column lift. Can I have a motion on those?
So moved.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell, Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
All right, 294 is accepting the resignation of Steve Wyman from Office of Emergency Management effective December 31, 2021. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'd just like to comment that it's been my pleasure to work with Steve for the 7 years that he's been in that position. He's an invaluable, valued, professional expert in his field. just the writing of the incident, the action reports that are required before a public event. I don't remember how many he wrote last year, but it was well in the 60s or 70s. Every major public event we have requires some careful planning to mitigate any potential problems. It's just the world that we live in today. And without Mr. Wyman's expertise and just constant vigilance, we wouldn't be able to do what we do in terms of opening our community to residents, visitors, shoppers. And I can't thank him enough for the countless, hours. People come to have fun. They don't realize what it took to make that event happen. And I certainly commend him for what he's done. I wish him well in his continued professional and personal life. And he will be hard to replace. He'll be missed. And I just wanted to mention that as he leaves us on for the first of the year. So let's have a roll call.
Council members Granville Brady?
Yes.
Tom Mitchell?
Yes.
Randy Pitts?
Yes.
Roger Vroom?
Yes.
Fred Weed?
Yes.
And 298 is accepting a grant of $3 million from the Hazardous Discharge Site Remediation Fund through the State of New Jersey Economic Development Authority and the Department of Environmental Protection.
So moved.
Second.
Now, I'll comment quickly on this. This is the first of what we hope will be 3 yearly payments of grant money from the state of New Jersey to help us finally clean up and cap the former Somerville municipal landfill, known as the dump on 206. It closed for garbage, I believe, in about 1984, and it's been an albatross for years. What are we going to do with it? How can we afford to clean it up? It's borough-owned property, which means that the cleanup costs ultimately would devolve onto the borough. We are in the preliminary stages of developing that site as a solar farm, and money from the state will make that happen. I don't have a definite timetable yet, but for us to have to bond this kind of money, $9 to $10 million, would probably eliminate any possible use of that site, because to put residential or even commercial activity there with people would increase the level of cleanup and would probably double or triple the cost. So this is money that we have sent to the state of New Jersey through our taxes over the years. It's nice to see some of it coming back. The pipe is starting to flow both ways. So I'm very appreciative of the state that granted us this money. A lot of borough resources went into this from our professional staff. And I want to thank Colin and Kevin, and Jeremy for helping us get to this point. And hopefully that this $3 million, like I said, will be the first of 3 awards that will finally make that site usable. And it's somewhat ironic that a landfill, a dump, is going to generate clean energy. And it's a long time in coming, right?
Yeah, let me elaborate on that. The estimated cost of the remediation is going to be $11,198,374. We're applying for a total of $8,398,781, which is 75% of the cost of remediation. We will be applying, as Dennis said, in 2 or 3 stages. The remaining 25% is going to be covered by CS Energy Hathaway, and then we will reimburse them for the work they've done. The money that is part of that 25%, is $2,799,000, will be paid out to CS Hathaway in grant over the 20-year period of time. So we will be paying for that in increments based upon the value of the energy that they are going to provide. By doing that, we anticipate that after the payments are made, the net income per year will be about $200,000. So we're getting the landfill cap. We're going to still make a bit of profit on it, although we're a non-profit organization, as everyone tells us. And for $200,000 in rent, it's a very good deal, because at the end of 20 years, if they don't If I'm not around and we're not around, they may not continue it, but we will have a capped landfill. And that's a pretty decent deal, the best deal I think we've had in a long time.
And also, if I may add, the solar farm is leaving the ground permeable, meaning it can absorb rainwater and can help to mitigate for the future floods.
One last thing, if this is approved by council, Your Honor, I would ask you to sign it expeditiously so that we can return it to the EDA so we get the money.
All right.
Okay.
Let's have a roll call vote, and that will trigger the paperwork.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes.
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
And Kevin, as soon as those documents are ready, let me know.
Sure.
All right, bills and vouchers.
Oh dear, wasn't a bad week. We were, of course, Marilyn wasn't around, so I had to sign all the vouchers in one pack, and believe me, there are a lot of vouchers. However, I moved the payment of bills and vouchers in the amount of $849,889.87, and that is my motion.
Second.
Council members Granville Brady,
Yes?
Tom Mitchell,
Yes.
Randy Pitts,
Yes.
Roger Vroom,
Yes.
Fred Weed.
Yes.
Before I call for adjournment, just want to make a comment going back to Mr. Powell's untimely passing. I understand he was fully vaccinated, but we know that being vaccinated is not, foolproof. It decreases your chance of getting very sick or dying, but in Mr. Powell's case, he had some underlying health conditions that made him a much higher risk. I know there's been a lot of political banter back and forth about masking and vaccinations, and I'm not here to preach, but I'm asking you to each family's got to make their own decisions. But in the spirit of community, in the spirit of collective responsibility, even one of the commentators on MSNBC today said even though he was vaccinated, obviously someone around him wasn't. And again, it's a difficult call, because we live in a democracy where we have freedom, but I think we have a collective responsibility. And I just feel bad, for him individually and for others out there who have done everything right. We've done a very good job here in Somerville. Our vaccination rate is equal to or better than the county and state average. There are still cases popping up. We haven't had the fatalities that we had early on, but it's just a word of caution. Holiday season's coming, we're having outdoor activities, flu season's coming. Just look deep within and make the best decision you can for not only yourself and your family, but the folks around you as well. Thank you, council, for letting me take a minute or two to say that. Democracy's hard, and we all pay a price for freedom. Let's just be reflective of that. And at that, I'll call for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. See you next month, November 1st.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
She's awake now.
Yeah, she's trouble.
Look
She
at her
knows she's
eyes.
trouble, she's cute.
She had to be under long, she did, because it was.
What's that?
It was, it was the angry one. So I was out there.
What are you doing?